Hello, Asia, and hello, world. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of the Election Observer podcast. In this episode, we're going to unpack the junta's planned elections in Myanmar. I'm your host, John Antiquera, and joining me today as co-host is my colleague, Mr. Tarindu Abiratna. Welcome back to the Election Observer podcast, Tarindu.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Yes, and I know you joined me in the previous episode in Bangladesh, no? So it's nice to have you back. But before we introduce our guest today, I just wanted to ask you a few questions first. No? Anfrel had a program and office in Myanmar before the military staged the coup in 2021. Can you share with us the work of Anfrel, what we did in Myanmar to support the democratization process in the country?
Yeah, I think Anfrel, as you correctly mentioned, like we had an office in Myanmar from 2013 until 2021 for a two cycle of elections in Myanmar. Anfrel also observed the 2020, 15, 17, 18 by-election and then 2020 the general election as well. So apart from election observation, Anfrel also conducted a lot of training programs for the domestic election observer groups from 2015 when Myanmar has started having election. So Anfrel actually conducted the training programs for local election observer groups to introduce the election observation, citizen election observation to the country, and also work with the media, the journalists, training the journalists on election reporting. So I think those are the main work that we have done before the coup, apart from election observation.
Yes, but unfortunately, as we've mentioned, and as we all know, the military staged the coup in 2021 after the general election in 2020, and you were there. Of course, you were our program officer in Myanmar, a resident program officer. I'm curious to know. I know you've talked about this previously, but I just wanted to ask, can you share with us your personal experience as things were unfolding during that time when the military staged the coup in Myanmar?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it was something that really didn't expect. There were before having the coup on 1st of February.
Yes.
So there were rumors about a possible military coup, and then we saw that like some of the political parties aligned with the military, having meetings with the military generals, and then also they are trying to create a narrative that election was not free and fair. But for our, not only just Anfrel, but also the other citizen observer groups also clearly mentioned that election was reflected the will of the people. So there were rumors, but I personally did not really expect that kind of situation. Eventually, so we had to close down our office because of the heavy crackdown. And then not just us, there are so many other organizations, the people who worked on the democracy had to flee the country. And then now the country has, got into a full-blown civil war after the coup. And then we are still trying to work with this situation.
Yes. Of course. Yeah, I think even after what happened, of course, Anfrel continues to monitor the situation in Myanmar, and we still continue to try our best to put programs in supporting, the democratization process, as well as in condemning, of course, what happened in Myanmar. So thank you for sharing your experience. Now, this particular episode is produced, of course, with the campaigns and advocacy team of Anfrel, which you lead. Can you help me introduce the discussion for today and our guest?
Yeah, before that, also better to, give a short snapshot about what's happening in the Myanmar right now. So we know the democratic progress in Myanmar achieved over the years arbitrarily revised by the military coup attempt in 2021, which dismantled the election institution, repressed the civil society and the political rights, and then led to the widespread violence against the pro-democracy activists and ethnic minority communities in Myanmar. In response, resistant movements have emerged across the country challenging the junta's rule. Despite the developments, the military regime has announced plans to proceed with the elections, positioning them as that's the next step forward for normalization, while in the reality they serve as the mechanism to consolidate authoritarian rule in the in with the legitimacy. The reports also indicate that the military maintains only 25% of the country when it comes to full control, while 42% is under the authority of resistant forces and ethnic armed organizations. The junta planned elections are therefore it's inherently flawed, of course. At as the significant portion of the population, particularly conflict-affected areas, also been neglected. Additionally, the military has restructured the electoral laws that we will discuss with Khin Ohmar later, and dismissed the previous election commission and introduced the changes to the political party registration process to favor the military-backed entities. The feasibility of the conducting national-wide election under these circumstances is highly questionable. And any attempt to recognize such process would risk the undermining the genuine democratic aspirations, further destabilizing the region and also the country as well. Undoubtedly, these upcoming elections in Myanmar are expected to be by many as sham, with concerns that they will be orchestrated by the military junta to legitimate its control and sustain military rule under the democracy. Despite the widespread condemnation from the local and international stakeholders, some neighboring countries have expressed willingness to support the junta elections. We see, because of the geopolitical concerns, some of the countries in the region are supporting junta for the elections. Over the 2 decades, Anfrel also, as we earlier we mentioned, we have been conducting election observation since the coup. We also observing the situation and then trying to support the pro-democratic activists and the people who are working on the democracy in the country. For that, I think we would like to introduce our guest speaker today. Yes. She's the chairperson and then the founder of the Progressive Voice Myanmar. I think a lot of people who knows about the civil society of Myanmar knows her. She's Ms. Khin Ohmar. Hi, welcome to the Election Observer podcast.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, we can. Yeah.
Great.
Yes, we do have some questions for you, and I think my colleague here, Tarindu, will be starting the questions now.
Okay, so I think earlier I also tried to give a sort of an understanding about what's happening in the Myanmar right now from 2021. And Omar, if you can really go through us what's happening actually in Myanmar since the coup. So there are a lot of things are happening. We see the resistance movement is going on in the country. At the same time, the military junta also trying to consolidate their power, and a lot of things to talk about when it comes to the geopolitics and all. But if you can really go through us what's happening in the country since the military coup until today, very briefly, that would be really good for us to have a better understanding about the situation.
Sure, thank you. As you have give the very rightly given that overview of where things are doing, thank you for that. What I can add to what you have already shared is for the past 4.5 years, I can say that our country, my birth country, the Myanmar, Burma, Myanmar, is actually going through a homegrown political transformation process, led by the people from all walks of, lives, from all sectors, all communities. The Burma Buddhist majority and also the non-Burma ethnic minority nationalities who have been for generations trying to gain their political equality against this military domination in this country. So with that, like as you said, over the 4 years time of the People's Revolution, you will see that the movement started in outright rejection to the military's illegal coup attempt. I said illegal coup attempt is also because even by the 2008 constitution, which is the military drafted constitution, the state of emergency declaration by Commander-in-Chief Min Aung back on 2021 February 1 was already illegal against the 2008 constitution. They, like as usual, they make manipulation even in their own constitution to make such kind of announcement. So people actually, I came from the 88 generation of the democracy movement, and for my over 35 years of this work to bring about democracy change to my country, I see that 2021 Spring Revolution led by Generation Z and the young generation activists is the most vibrant, most inclusive, the largest cross-country nationwide. Of course, started as the we call the peaceful or the the political defiance, right? But then when as we all know, how this military will always respond to the people. So that was really like unprecedented violence was applied in the crackdown to the demonstrations, even much worse much worse than our time. So the People's Spring Revolution the People's Spring Revolution actually expanded into another front. So first started with the non-violence political defiance, and then there is another component after the military's unprecedented violence expanded into the armed resistance to defend themselves. And there is this National League for Democracy, which is the interim government, come from the result of the 2020 election, combined by the representatives from the ethnic community. So there you will see that political process as well as the armed resistance, and you also see the continuing non-violence, also partly that is joined by what they call as civil disobedience movement, which is in what civil disobedience movement is very unique. More than 400,000 civil servants from like a private sector, public sector actually, as well as even from the security sector like the military and police forces joining the People's Revolution. So more than 400,000 joined. It was huge, right? So along the four and a half years, with their own efforts and immense sacrifices, like you said, the military, first time ever in their 60 years of the history, they are losing. They are losing on the ground to their democratic resistance. That's something that we can really see by they are losing of their not only their territory and administration, but also their own troops. Either they give up and surrender to the revolution, or they join the revolution, or like basically they were not able to get out of their camps because they are worried about. So basically you see this resistance, democratic resistance, ethnic resistance for many years existence. They are all in combined are actually like targeting this military. This year in particular, I would call as offensive. The revolution started as defensive in 2021 and 2022, 2023. By then, 2024 and onward, I see that shifted to the more offense side rather than the defense. So now the military is still controlling some key urban areas or the major cities where the resistance is controlling large part of the Mars territory, including like 94 cities. So that's what we're seeing, no? But also one thing that we have to we have to really pay attention is how the human rights situation or their protection or lack of protection for the Myanmar people right now is very severe. We have a situation where the military not only killed more than like almost 7,000 demonstrators, protesters, but also they arbitrarily detained more than 29,000 people. And right now, out of 29,000, they still detain over 22,000 who are still in prison. Some are on the death row. So there's a lot of torture and inhumane treatments in the prison. And just yesterday, one young woman, a student leader, 25 years old, died from the severe torture in the prison, in notorious insane prison in Yangon. Whereas there's another political leader dying from the torture in another prison in Mon State, for example. I'm just giving you the latest situation, but the human rights situation is so severe, the violations are so severe. But then you also have to see that beyond that, this military already committed more than 330 massacres that involve killing of more than 5 people, including the elderly, children, women. And those actually takes place, including, those massacres are also resulted because of the bombings. No, Myanmar military has been constantly like using their air power very severely, and even like I mean, many of the whole world experience not witnessed the earthquake in the last how many 4 months now, no, since March, and even during the earthquake, the military was still bombing. So according to the documentation, I can tell you that the total documentation right now is more than 5,400 incidents of airstrikes and bombings, and that already resulted in killing of nearly 3,000 people and injuring about 3,000 more, and that includes young children. No? And the conflict-related sexual violence cases are also getting like increased. According to women organizations, like more than 900 cases being documented, but only the cases that the women organizations are able to have access to. But knowing of the long-standing record of the Myanmar military using the rape as a weapon of war in their, like any military operations against any resistance, I can imagine, 960, over 960 cases are just tip of the iceberg. So that's where I can also add one more point that really concern me is the children are now also being forced into the military, abducted and used as informers, or like even under 12 are forced into the military because military is looting on the ground a lot. So they are heavily relying on the airstrikes and bombings, but because they're losing so much territorial control, administrative control on the ground, they are in fact trying to refill their troops, right? So what they're doing is since last year, they've been forcibly conscripting the young, both men and women between age 18 to 35, to like forcing them to join the army. No, so that is also another major human rights violations that we're seeing. Just last point that I want to share with you is the further intensifying humanitarian crisis, because the military is bombing, particularly in all of the areas that they are losing the territorial control on the ground, meaning like in Shan State, Karen, like Tanendai, Chin, Rakhine in the west, and also central like Magui and Sagai in the central Myanmar. So in those areas, so because they are bombing, we are seeing more than 3.5 million civilians being uprooted from their homes and moving on mobile, where the international humanitarian agencies are being blocked by this Myanmar military to bring the aid to the most needy, for most vulnerable population. So the crisis is further intensifying because of the earthquake as well. So as a civil society, humanitarian frontliners, we are all trying our best to fill in the gap where the international UN agencies and international aid donors are not able to reach to those most vulnerable population. That's what things are. Yeah.
That's a lot to digest. It's a lot of information to digest, and I guess
Yeah, basically, I think she created a portrait, like what's happening in the country from the south to the south to north, west to east, in different places across the country, how the civil war has been intensified. I think I really agree with what she mentioned about like earlier in first 2 years, like 2021, 2022.
Yes.
The resistant forces were mostly very defensive, but it actually from last year it turned into the other way around. They are becoming more aggressive than the military at this point. Like aggressive means like they are very the she mentioned about defensive, and then the other one more proactive, more proactively.
So they're
controlling the territories.
They're on the offense right now.
Yeah, they're in the offense right
These
now.
are like sports terms, no? But we have Khin Ohmar back.
I was just adding to what Darindu shared with you. The fighters on the ground are young, who were like engineering students, when the military staged the coup. And as engineering student, like aerospace engineering student, basically they take on their school what they learn from the school, then they build up more knowledge from the YouTube, and they build their own drones. Basically, that's what happened. So for the Myanmar military, they will have to buy from the China, right? But for these young fighters on the ground, they just use whatever they find, the plastic pipes or whatever, and then they would just use whatever available to build the drones. First to like a scout the military troops coming in, so they can have the one give the warning to the villagers to run, and like that. But then they were able to add up more, so they can even actually now get to the point of like just last month or 2 weeks ago, they actually shot down a military fighter jet.
Yeah. And also, I remember a few months ago there was a drone attack. Like those resistant forces attacked the military
Yes,
in
Air Force.
Naypyidaw.
Yeah.
In Naypyidaw, like their center, like using their own drones. So that's how the conflict is, like at the this point, while military is trying to have an election.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe you can go to the next question, Darren, too, no?
Yeah. So, I mean, our next question again, we talked about how the security condition in worsening with the civil war intensifying in the country, but like the junta is really wanted to have an election. They have really determining, and then now like giving more information about the timeline, and then we also see a lot of preparations going on. Why they really want to have an election at this point?
Yeah. Yes. Like I was saying, like first of all, what I want to also, is a testament from me, as a Burmese democracy activist for over 30 years in this work. I have watched successive military regimes in Burma, Myanmar, always rewriting the meaning of election to serve the bearer of a gun, to serve their own purpose, their own interest, to hang on to the power in the name of quote unquote, some sort of democracy. Yeah. So what the current military, the current illegal military junta is doing now is, yes, of course, they call it an election, right? And they made the announcement that they will hold by December 2025 and January 2026. So this is definitely, of course, not a democratic process by all means. And we know it is really a brutal, it's going to be a brutal performance to reinstate their oppressive military rule over the people. But why are they really pushing and rushing in this particular time in 2025? Is because, as we discussed earlier, they are losing like drastically on the ground, and they are very desperate. So in order for them to carry on or try to really take another path or another way to finish their coup attempt to seize control of the country, they also need international recognition or international legitimacy, right? Because so far, they don't have a representative in the United Nations General Assembly, because the Myanmar ambassador to the United Nations General Assembly, the highest diplomatic corps from Myanmar, represents the people of Myanmar, the revolution, and the national unity government. So see, they need to actually get to there, right? So for that, they have to hold quote unquote election. But also, this is a way for them to whitewash their violence and their atrocity crimes that they have committed against the people. Like I said, they committed more than 300 massacres, no? That's only talking about the massacres that involves at least 5 people in each incident, right? So that is the one reason, because they want the international legitimacy. And the second is also they want to whitewash their crimes committed against the people. So for that, like they need to, they need to actually change their image to their new name, new form, in the name of quote unquote elected government in the civilian uniforms. So regardless of how we all know, how the whole world see clearly that this is a charade, sham, and facade, in addition to the outright rejection by the people of Myanmar as a whole. No? But what is there for them? What is in this quote unquote election for them? Of course, if you see from their perspective, by the dictator's old playbook, this will serve, like I said, this will definitely, there is a potential opening to serve for them to fully re-engage with the international community. At least, I can imagine that they are looking forward to the investment coming in, sanctions being lifted off, things like that. But also, like from that on, in the guise of civilian uniform and civilian name, they can also control the narrative of the country as if the country goes back to normalcy. Yeah. And I think that is one danger also, because if that happens, if some part of the international community, knowingly or not knowingly, possibly knowingly, but for their own national interest, but some probably not knowingly in detail of what that is all about, if they falsely lend legitimacy to this hunters sham election, or even lend any kind of technical, political, financial support, then what that means is that their support will actually embolden this Myanmar military to continue to commit those atrocity crimes, such as like bombing the civilians, arresting, torturing, killing democracy activists. So yeah, they definitely look into what they could gain. And of course, this is new to our country's situation. But I also concerned, because of the earthquake. As you will remember, the chief of the military junta immediately called for the international aid for the earthquake, to respond to the earthquake. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's very clearly they see this as a jackpot for them, rather than to save the people and help the people, no? Because the very reason is they can use this kind of international aid or the international assistance in the name of the Myanmar people for their own political benefit. Just like what they did back in 2008 during the Cyclone Nagis. They let the 140,000 people die, but only after that they opened the international to come with the aid, but only to use by, not only the harassment, but giving a little bit of rice and oil to the people in exchange of vote for their military drafted constitution, you see. So that kind of, same old playbook, this military will continue to, also we will see them continue to apply, but probably in different way, because we are in the different time and different context. Yeah.
You have clearly stated why the upcoming planned elections of the military junta would be deemed as sham. And of course, there are also a lot of different things that should be prioritized other than the elections, but I guess they are really prioritizing being legitimized by the election that they are planning. Um, that answers our next question actually, but we would like to move forward to our fourth question, which is what changes has the junta made to Myanmar's election laws to ensure that any elections under the junta serve their interests rather than the will of the people? Of course, they're planning elections. They have made changes. What have they made so far to ensure that this election goes to whatever happens?
Yeah, I have seen, we have seen, well, since after 2021, the first thing that they did was also, like banning the political parties,
Yeah.
right? So basically asking the political parties to re-register, no?
Okay.
Of course, the National League for Democracy, who won the overwhelming majority in 2020, will not register because they are uh, the interim government in effect right now in the revolution time, you see. So the prime minister is in the country, the acting president is in the country, 18 ministries, 18 ministers of the interim government is also working in the country. Of course, the president and state councillor are being imprisoned by the junta. But you see, there are also local administrations are also, functioning in the ethnic areas. People-led administrations are being set up, functioning, or further strengthened. No, but the military, of course, they carry on, like you said, like they will not give any other. They will give the priority to this holding the election. So, for now, 53 political parties being banned, and including the NLD, because NLD, of course, didn't re-register, right? But recently, the military junta controlled Union Election Commission, they stated that the elections will be held in 267 out of their 330 townships. So that is also, you will, if you check on closely, the UEC has, like the mandate to change the constituency, to change the constituencies as it likes. So basically, what I see is that since 2021, some of the areas, demographic areas of the counting of the townships have been also recalculated and changed, like a change. For example, like I'm just saying as an example, not the accurate here, not just to give you the example. Let's say if there are like 18 townships in Bago region, like after this military junta, they have already added up more. So there are already like over 20 townships, for example, so that they have a larger number of the townships. But then the linking from the townships to the constituencies also, according to the wish of the UEC, they can also change. So now the UEC announced that 267 out of 330 townships, there will be elections will be held in there. So, but what that means is that they are excluding, let's say, like over 60 townships in their own calculation. Yeah, over 60 townships, meaning that these areas are geographically limited conditions. So that means that these areas, we can also say that areas are under the full control of the democratic resistance. At least that we can say. Last year they held the national census, but according to their own data, they said they were able to take the survey of the national census only in 150 out of 330. That means also from their own data, they have more or less, like more than half only, if they could even do that in fully, in full sense, which I doubt it, because many of those areas are also under the many areas are either contested or under the effective control by the resistance too, you see. But if you look at the UEC will actually they will use two electoral system. One is the FPTP, the fast past the post, right? Then they will also use the proportional representation PR system for this one. And this way, they can get advantage to get votes for their proxy political parties without them contesting in person. So I think that's going to give them another advantage by using the two systems combined. And they actually they also said that the Mail Line in fact said they will hold elections in December 2025 and January 2026, meaning they will not hold the national elections like before in one day, but they're going to go periodically. So that will allow them a better chance to orchestrate or they like orchestrate their show, no? So like it's like in 2 months time that they will do it. And now UEC is already advancing the rollout of the MEVM. They call them Myanmar electronic voting machines, the MEVMs. So they said they will use nearly 55,000, and they are already training the people. But according to the teachers, usually the teachers are trained to volunteer, no? So according to the teachers who are given the training, they are saying that these machines can instantly change the voting results without leaving any evidence. So again, like these machines are in their hands, in the hands of this hunter, and it is not an automatic system. So we can see also, many of these flaws are already there. But one thing also is that we have to look into what happened in the 2010 election as well, when there were no opposition whatsoever. But what they did was they actually collected advance voting from millions of migrant workers outside the country. Whether people go to the embassies or not, people don't care seriously. They don't have time and money to go to the Myanmar hunters control embassy in Bangkok. For example, why would they go? They need to earn the money for their families, right? But the challenge here now is not only the vote by the workers, but there are families who are left behind in the country. They will be intimidated and harassed. So it would be like one migrant workers vote is like getting the whole family's eligible voters votes in a way, yeah, because people will be worried, people will be afraid. Even during the census in October 2024, the militia, the police show up with the guns door to door, you see. So I think that's also a challenge. Also, the UEC, they changed their political party registration requirement, giving a little bit more flexibility for their own benefit. In the past, the political parties, they have to have, if they are going to contest nationwide, they have to have offices in at least 50% of the whole country constituencies, but now has been reduced to only one third. They only need to open the offices in one third of the constituencies. So basically, giving a better chance also for their proxies at the same time, like the military backed body like USDP, right? USDP continue to remain as the largest because the party stem from the Myanmar military. So basically, they are going to have a better chance also because they only need one third of the offices open. So that's one thing. But let me move to another very important point here. Yeah. Let's say if the hunter were able to proceed with that election plan, regardless of how facet and sham and charade. After the election, if they will convene the parliament, according to their 2008 constitution, in the first day of the parliament, they only need at least 50% plus one quorum in order to call this is effective parliament in effect. So you have to remember that military already automatically takes up 110 seats, right? So
Seats,
if you
yeah.
count that, 110 seats, you only need 111 seats more from quote unquote civilian side of the election, elected representatives, in order to say that quorum is filled for the first day of the parliament, so that parliament is in effect. Okay, well, let's take the next scenario. What if they don't have 111 to fill their quorum of 50% plus one? The second day of the parliament, they only need one third. That means 110 military plus how many we need? Only 37. I mean, if you think of how they are maneuvering and going to be manipulating the system with their allies and proxies, it's quite possible, right? So if you think from that perspective, also it's very dangerous also.
We've noticed from the news and developments happening in Myanmar that this military is really persistent in holding the elections. No, but of course we also wanted to know what the people feel about it. What do you think the people of Myanmar would want the international community to know, and what kind of support are they hoping for amid what is currently happening in the country?
Well, let me start by saying that the Spring Revolution itself was already a very clear evidence up by the people, all over the country. It was the outright rejection of the Myanmar militaries trying to steal their votes that they have given to the National League for Democracy, you see? And that's why the people in city, in urban, in rural, everywhere, whether under the military control or under the resistance administration, people are on the same page. As far as I read, I hear, I listen, people don't accept this military hunters election. And it's very clear for them. They have voted for the government that they wanted, and that government has been violently attacked. Their president and state council are being imprisoned. So it's very clear for the people. Yeah. So that is the one thing that we need to be very clear. This so-called election that the junta is planning to hold, it is a weapon itself to reinstate this tyrannical rule or the military rule to further terrorize the Myanmar people, and people know it. And that's the very reason you will see that especially the young generations from all ethnicity, all religion, all sectors are working hard together to really win their revolution so that they can build a sustainable future for them and for their future generations to come, you see. That's the very reason we are calling on the international community to reject this sham election, right? Because Myanmar people are, with their own effort and immense sacrifices, doing the best they could to stop this military violence, to build their own sustainable future that is peaceful, and to also stop or reject this sham election by proving of their desire and their will and their democratic aspiration. So that's why they are calling on the international community to deny lending any technical, financial, political support to the hunter and reject this plan as well. I have to say that the Association of Southeast Asian Nation on July 11, at the end of the foreign ministers meeting, right? They have already issued the ASEAN's official position, saying that the Hontas election is not a priority and will not solve any problems, but instead will worsen conditions. Well, this position I welcome, which is a long advocated for by organizations like us, our civil society at large, both Myanmar regional, international, and it's a long overdue, very clear and rightful political decision that ASEAN has taken. I just hope the other international community, including the other countries in neighbors, as well as the United Nations, other members of the international communities, other governments, will actually also take such clear position like the ASEAN did. And they should, right? Because the whole world asked the ASEAN to solve Myanmar problem. They threw the Myanmar ball into the court of the ASEAN. So now the ASEAN has taken a very clear and bold political position, making that very clear. This election is not the answer. The others should actually follow, like Japan, Korea, Australia, US, Canada, and the Europe, UK, and all. No, I think the other thing is, of course, this alone, rejecting the junta's sham election plan alone will not resolve the crisis or bring the change to Myanmar. We need a lot more support. The Myanmar people are seeking support to end this military rule and establish a genuine federal democratic governance. So there are, like I said, there are local administration led by people being built, strengthened, functioning, but no international community is supporting that. These building blocks of the democracy need to be supported in order for Myanmar to actually rebuild as a whole. So that's definitely also important support that people are looking for. The other support people are urgently looking for is to address the humanitarian crisis, because it is further intensified, not only the military made, but also the natural disaster made. So it's a poly crisis in combined. So it's very challenging for us to solve ourselves alone. And also the other is the protection from the military's violence. Particularly, the people want the ASEAN and UN international community to impose global arms embargo, including the aviation fuel flow and financial flow to the military, so that military don't have the chance to buy more weapons or buy more aviation fuel to bomb the people. I think these are the very key, support people are calling for. The lastly is this military needs to be held to account by law. Otherwise, our country have no future. They have enjoyed blanket impunity for generations, for decades. And these military top generals, starting from May Online, need to be prosecuted, need to be held accountable by international law, because they committed massive international human rights crimes. So I think that is the key area. We are all really working so hard. We need more justice and accountability support from the international community also.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Khin Ohmar. No, I think that was our last question as well. But thank you for sharing what you have been observing in Myanmar, and of course, what the people of Myanmar want actually to happen in the country. But thank you again for joining us in this afternoon's episode.
Thank you so much for having me too. And as we will see in coming weeks and months, the people will also try their best to tell the whole world that they don't accept this military rule, they don't accept, and therefore they don't accept this sham election. We, of course, would like to see no more violence to the military, targeted to the civilians. And we don't want any more arrest, any more murder in the field or in the prison. So we just hope, I just really hope that ASEAN under the Malaysia chairmanship in the next few months will step up from this position, not accepting or rejecting the military junta's election. From this step, I really hope that ASEAN will take the next step with the concrete actions to support the people's revolution to end this military violence in Myanmar. Thank you so much for having me.
And that has been the Electoral Observer podcast episode on the emerging and pressing issues in emerging pressing issues. No, that was our episode on what is happening in Myanmar and unpacking the planned election of the military junta in the country. We were talking about earlier before we started the recording of the show. We were also talking about my last question to Khin Ohmar. I just wanted to ask if you have anything to add, because we knew about the developments in ASEAN, but are there other statements from international organizations as well?
Yeah, I mean, apart from the King Omar mentioned what was the ASEAN, the latest response to the elections in Myanmar, they clearly said that this is not the time to conduct an election in the country. Apart from that, I think the UN Special Envoy for Myanmar, or also UN Special Rapporteur for Myanmar, in last the sessions in United Nations Human Rights Council, that clearly mentioned the whatever the elections going to happen inside the country is not going to resolve the issues in the Myanmar. It will further create more violence in the country, because it will create a lot of other violence there. Apart from the current violence happening right now, there will be extra violence because of these election attempts. So that's why I think the UN and then the ASEAN more advocating not to have an election at this point, because if you really look at in the surface, even their situation, what we see, it's a conflict. It's not a situation that you can have an election right now.
Okay. So that has been, again, the episode on unpacking the planned elections of the military junta in Myanmar. You have a line, Narindo. Yes, that one. Get the latest news.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, John. And then I think you can
get the latest news and updates.
Yes, get the latest news and updates about Anfrel programs, and then through our Facebook, you can go to X, LinkedIn, and then our TikTok pages. You can also subscribe our YouTube channel and then the WhatsApp channels.
Please follow the Election Observer podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Thank you for joining us again, Tarindu, today.
Thank you very much.
I'm your host, John Antiquera, and have a great day, everyone. Bye.